Hey, good afternoon out there. It's JP here with Meets Fab and Customs. We're going to do a video here of we're going to drill out an axle. We're going to drill out an I-beam axle here. So I got this I-beam axle that I've had it floating around forever, and it's time to make it sexy. So the way we're going to make this thing sexy is we're going to put some 1-inch holes in it. Is what we're going to do here, and that because it just makes it look nice and pretty. So that's what we're going to do with this thing. So the biggest thing with doing these is the layout of it and everything is what a little bit of that math work that we said we'd never use. The other thing with it is finding your center and everything on how you're going to drill it. How far over you're going to come is the other thing. So if you look here on this axle, right in here, how this tapers down, well, you kind of want your last hole right in there. You don't want to get into this perch mount here. This is structural right in here. So your last hole, you want to be right in this here area. You don't want to get up into here, into your perch mount, because then you're going to make all this thin. So, like I said, then you want to find your center point from here to here. In here is what you want to find all the way across. So the first thing that we need to do here is we need to blue this axle so we can lay it out. So what I got here is blue layout fluid, spray can form. You can get this any machinist place. I use this quite a bit for doing when you're chopping or doing sheet metal work and stuff like that, where you really need a fine line. The reason why we're using that is because what we're going to end up doing is using our calipers to find our center point here. And find the center point here in the web. Right here is what we're going to end up doing. So you want to be able to take this and run this all the way down where your center point's going to be. And that, so we can then mark out the distance of where our holes are going to be. So that's why we're using bluing on this. And then you make a nice line, and then we can center punch it and everything and make sure everything's looking good. So that's the reason behind that. So right now, I'm just going to try not to cover everything in bluing. Now, if you don't have bluing, another trick you can do is get yourself a thick permanent marker, a black one, and just color it. Just color all that in, and then you can scribe a mark in that way too. So there's ways to get around stuff. If you don't have this, or it's late at night in your garage and you don't have it and you want to do the job, just like I said, just grab yourself a permanent marker. You can use a Sharpie if you want, but heck man, it'll take forever doing it that way. And who knows how many Sharpies you're gonna go through, and we all know Sharpies are like gold in the shop. So you're just gonna let that dry, and then we'll start laying it out. What we can do while we're waiting for that to dry is grab your little, this here makes laying stuff out a lot easier, and I've shown them to you before in other videos here. It's for making holes, and they have the little lines here to find the center of your holes. I bought this one here at an Office Depot or something like that. I got a couple of them floating around. They're handy. They're handy. Like my father used to say, it's handier than a pocket on a shirt. But you can also hold it into your web here and see what size hole you want, which sometimes a visual is better for you, because as long as short, you don't want to screw this axle up. You don't want to start taking too much metal out of this, and you have a bunch of scrap metal here. And so what I do is I have this little area right here. Yeah, neat. Got a coil over number there, but I'll just take in that, because if everyone else out there is about as good as I am with math, which isn't very good, I just go to my 1-inch hole here, mark this, mark this, mark this, mark this. So then, like I said, you can just go like this, and you join all your centers up. Like this. So, now we need to figure out how much space we want from this edge to your next circle. I'm figuring 1 inch is what I'm figuring. Now, with that being said, to make life easy, you can just go like this and say go 1 inch, like that. And then you can take your fancy little piece here. There, you line your center up there. And there's your 1 inch to the outside. Right there. And you just go, boom. Same thing, mark your centers, because the lines you actually want when you're doing this is the center of your circle line for when you're hammering this thing out. So there. And there. So now, if you look here, we have 1 inch in between here. And then a 1 inch hole. So now if you take your ruler, lay it out just like this, and there, you know you're going to be 2 inch center to center. Is what you're going to be. 2 inch center to center is how you're going to lay this out. So what we'll end up doing here is once we start laying this out and find the center, then we'll just roughly do 2 inch centers all the way across, and then we can see where everything falls, see if it works out for us. And you know, if you want to play engineer, feel free. You can measure this, do arithmetic, do this, do that, you know, subtract. If that's how you want to do it, feel free. Feel free. I don't know. Nothing wrong with math. Love math. Wish I would have paid attention to it more. But that's the easiest way I've found to lay them out. I'm going to be honest. When I dimple die, I do the same thing. I actually have a dimple die template, and that's what this right here is for me. So when I'm doing my dimple dies, it's the same idea. This is how much room I need, and I can lay this out on my piece of work and mark it. You know, there's my center point there, there's my center point there, and I can lay it. So you can move this thing around and on what works best for you. So I don't know, everyone, each to their own on how you want to do it. That's how I do things. I find it works out good for me. So if you got another way to do it, hit me up in the comments. I'm always willing to learn. So the next thing we're going to do here is we got to find the center point. Is what we have to do. So we're finding the center point on these. The best thing I've found are these seamstress tape measures. I use them a lot, and so I highly recommend these. You can do it with a string and a tape measure and all that. But so what we're going to do on the bottom edge here, I'm going to go from the center. I'm going to go from the center of here. Right there. So you're mounting right there to the center of this one. Why I'm using this tape because this thing's got a bend in it. So trying to do it with a normal tape is kind of a pain in the ass. So with these tapes, they take the shape. So I got 35 from center to center. There. So what I do, so you don't really confuse yourself, is I'll write on this bench here 35. So then you want to go half of 35 is 17 and a half. There. So what I do is I take my tape again. It was 17 and a half. Right there. And the problem is trying to use that Sharpie, it is just not showing up, but that's why we use the bluing. So it's 17 and a half. I just scribe it right there. Is what we do. So that's your center point right there. That's the center of your axle. Right here at that point there. So now you work everything off of there. Instead of coming from this side all the way across, work everything each way from your center. Because what will happen here, if you start down here and you start getting off, by the time you're down here, you're way off. So here, it's easier to watch. And that on what, whether you're off or not. So that's why I do it that way. So we've got that center point found. Now we need to find inside the web center point is what we need to find here next. Right in here. And that. So the way I find that, so trying to go inside this web here. And that, like trying to get that web inside here is tough because you got the roll and everything. So I actually go from here to here on your outsides to find your center points is what I'll do. So you take your calipers here, and it's, you know, it's not a freaking science. Not, you know, try to keep things as simple as you can. And that, and right there. So now once you find that, you come back over here to your ruler, and you go from there to there, just like that, and we got 2 inch. So we know we're going to take this down to 1 inch. That's what we're going to do. Just like that. So now once you get to 1 inch, you can just lay this thing just like this. And you can do the run down. Now start with just a little spot there. And then go on your other side and make sure you're in the center. You might have to adjust that a little bit, but just make sure you're in the center. And that, because that line should hit. When you come down into here, and here, your line that you did on this side should hit. So now all you're gonna do is you're just gonna go boom, just like that, all the way down. Okay, so now we got that line. So now, if you remember those measurements we took of 2 inches center to center, you come here, you start at your center point, just like this, and you go 2 inch. So if you want, you put a hole directly in the center if you really want to, but you go 2 inch, 2 inch, 2 inch, 2 inch, all the way down is what you do. And you do the same thing on the other side. But like I said, bring all your measurements from your center point. Don't, you know, don't start at one end. Because if you get at this end, if you get a 16th out, 8th out, by the time you hit this other end with all your holes, you're going to be out a country mile. And then you got to redo it all over again. So that's the layout there on how to lay those all out. So once I get this laid all out, then we'll temple tie all, or we won't temple tie, sorry, we'll center punch all these holes out. So I'm just going to lay all this out, and then we'll center punch them all. Here we go. Let's get this done. So it's all laid out, center punched. Here, as you can see, laid out, center punched. Now if you look, my last hole is right here, which is going to come over 1/2 inch from there. So it'll be right in this area here. So you're quite a ways away, you're out of this web here, which is what you want to be. You don't want to get into here. And that, because that's where you'll end up breaking this with your perch bolt. This is where you got a ton of stress in here, because that's where your spring and everything goes. So don't get into this. And that's why I'm quite a ways out back in here. So I'm not in the web here where the stress point is in here. So, and I've seen some, not very many, where they've drilled in here. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it at all, because you have a lot of stress happening in here. And that, so personally, I'd stay the heck out of there. I wouldn't even get into that area. But here, so that's all ready. What I'll do is I'll probably take an 1/8 drill bit just on my hand drill and just go into these. And that, so I have a good marking for when I go over to the milling machine. And you don't need a milling machine to do this. You can do this with a drill press. I've done them with a drill press before I had a milling machine. So, you know, it's, I don't recommend doing them with a hand drill for a 1 inch, because you're probably going to punch yourself in the mouth a few times. But, yeah, you can use a drill press to do these. So I'm just going to, like I said, I'll just take my little, an 1/8 inch drill bit, just to put in, so you can see the marks easy, so you can see the holes easier and everything. And then go at it from there. So that's where we're at right now. So I'll just grab a drill here and get these going. Oh, here we go. Let's get some holes drilled. So I got all those drilled. I just went in with an 1/8. The reason why I do it that way is now it's easier to line things up to make sure everything looks good for starters. And now, I didn't even drill all the way through, but you can look at the line there. You see we're down the middle. What I'll end up doing next is I'll take a 1/4 to a 5/16 drill bit. I might even take a 5/16. And then it's easier to line up in there, especially when you're getting old and you're half freaking blind. So, and that's what I'll do now. I'll put this on the milling machine next, and then I'm not gonna go at it right away with a 1 inch bit. And that it's no different. I'll work my way up to it. Then that is what I'll do in there, instead of going right at it with a 1 inch, because if things start walking around on you, and that, especially if you're using a drill press, at the milling machine, that you can go with bigger sizes, but work your way up to it. That's my personal opinion. I do that with all holes, actually, when I'm drilling them. It's easier on the bit, easier on your life, and yeah. So I'll just get this all laid up on the milling machine there, and we'll start drilling some holes. So the biggest thing is the layout on this. Is what the biggest thing is, and don't be afraid at this point. Even take your ruler, because we can still save it. These are just little holes, so if you got to move it a bit, you can save it still. So, it's better to notice stuff now than to notice stuff later on that you're out, because later on you can't really fix it, and axles aren't getting any cheaper anymore. So it's 15/16. So we're good there with those holes. So as long as you're all measured out. So like I said, measure twice, because it really sucks when you cut something or drill something short twice. That's real kick in the rinky dink when you do that. So measure twice. And this one here looks good. But like I said, I'll probably get on there with my verniers next to make sure I'm right on the money. And we'll start drilling some holes. So let's get this all set up in the milling machine, and we'll go from there. Okay, I got the axle here. It's all set up in the milling machine right there. I'm going to start with 3/8. Like I said, I've already roughly done it partway through with the 1/8 to line your holes and everything up. So what I'm going to do now is I can only do one side at a time, because I'll be honest, this thing was a bit of a pain to get to clamp down. So I got to clamp down. So I'm going to do the one side here, get it all complete, and I'll turn this thing around and we'll do the other side. And that is what we'll do. So I'll probably go 3/8. I'll just work my way up to 1 inch is what I'm going to do here. So that's what we're going to do right now. We'll hit it with 3/8, and then we'll come back, and instead of going all at once with 1 inch, and that's what we're going to do. So let's get to doing some fancy drilling and making this axle lighter and sexier. And yeah, that's it. That's what we're going to do right now. axle off the old milling machine here, and I can only go with 3/4 inch holes. Here, when I started measuring it up, all right, there we go. Got a drilled axle. But what happened when I started to drill it, you can see here, I'll fix it, but it was just 1 inch was too much. So I stuck there with 3/4 inch holes. There we go, it's all drilled out. It's just a matter of cleaning the bluing and everything off of it, and we got a nice drilled out axle there. And it's all nice and centered. So that's just old school, you know, drilling out an axle. Like I said, you can do it on a drill press at home. You don't need a milling machine. You don't need fancy tools to do it. And it improves the look of your front end of your vehicle. So it's, you know, stay out of your webbing and stuff so you don't take the strength away. And it's just a real cool, cool look for your old school hot rod. So, you know, in all honesty, that job probably took me a couple hours. A couple hours makes a huge improvement on the front end. So if you got a solid front axle, you know, don't be afraid to drill it out. But like I said, that just took me a couple hours, and it's going to improve the front end of your hot rod and give it a bit of an old school look. So now I'm going to I'll be carrying on here, get this all put together so I can get it underneath this car, this Model A here, and get this Model A down on all 4 wheels finally. But if you liked the video and you found it informative, how am I with the big words, be sure to, you know, subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. You know, get it out there. If you have any comments on, you know, easier ways to do stuff like that, post them. Post it on here. You know, I'm always about learning. Everyone should be always about learning. So, till we take on get to doing the next project here, which is probably gonna be putting this axle all together. Get out in the shop. Weather's turning nice. Summer's coming. Time to get these hot rods out and get them running. Get out there. Do something cool. And till the next time, sure to like, share, follow, all that good stuff. Talk to you soon. Bye.